Mr. Barna Gábos, who makes only bamboo flutes, and Patrick Olwell makes bamboo flutes as well. So the first question for you would be, why bamboo? Why bamboo? What's special about bamboo? Why to buy a bamboo flute, for example, and what is the plus and the minus about the bamboo flute? Quindi una domanda relativa al flauto di bambù.
Well, that's a very good question, I think. I just think that the bamboo naturally is how it grows, and the material is fantastic. And the hardness and the shape of the tube as it grows naturally. I think the bamboo, you find a very nice, good piece of bamboo, and you just check the shape of the bamboo, that piece of bamboo inside and outside. It's just like it grows like perfect flute shape inside. Sometimes I just don't have to do nothing with it. Just take the embouchure hole and make the tone holes, and it sounds great. So and the hardness, it's a very hard material. It's very resonant, and I think that's the bamboo used in many cultures to making instruments, like in South America, like in India. Well, this maybe the father of these flutes, it's the bansuri, the Indian traditional flute, and I think it's just a fantastic material. It's very nice to work with it, and naturally has a very good shape inside. Well, I'm using drills and reamers. Reamers to shaping some of my flutes inside. But sometimes I just don't do nothing with it because it just has to work. Diameter sometimes and shaping. So I just love this material.
Could you please speak a bit louder?
Yes. Okay. So I think I just love it, this material. I think it's
okay, and where this bamboo comes from?
well, this bamboo, I think, because I had a very hard time to, because in Hungary you can grow. There is some types of bamboo which can grow, but this type which got the long sections between the nodes, you can't grow it because that's tropical bamboo. And I had a big luck because I was just searching for it. I know this handles which has got a bamboo stick, and you can make a fire on it. You can just buy in the shops, and I was just collecting that once, and I just collected everything which made from bamboo, a handle from bamboo, like a brush or everything. And I was just looking at the shape. Oh, that's a nice brush, you know, and that's a nice flute as well. You know, you can make a nice flute from it as well. And finally I find the place. They are working with furnitures, bamboo furnitures and kind of stuff, and they brought in many like that much bamboo, like this room. You can fill up this room with bamboo, and nobody buys it, and it's very cheap. And I find it. This called semi-rundinaria faustosa. This is well, sometimes it doesn't have very long enough sections between the notes, so that's why I thought that okay, I will make from several pieces, for example, and I think nobody buys that bamboo, just me. So they are very happy when I'm going there, and I'm just carrying a big pack of.
Well, and as we will listen to after, the result is very good, I think. So, Mr. Olwell, you have been making bamboo flute for a long time. Would you tell us, please, where do you take your own bamboo, the bamboo you use for your flute?
I started out buying bamboo from China, and from shops in New York City who imported bamboo. I tried 7 different kinds of bamboo, but I discovered this in Florida, on trips to Florida, so I ended up cutting my own. And even in a really, really large bamboo grove, 100 meters long, we still have to crawl around and pick ones with really long nodes. So you're there with your little saw and there's mosquitoes.
So that's where your father brought you to have a picnic when you were young.
Working, carrying the bamboo out.
Yeah, that's important. And what do you like about the bamboo flute? I mean, you make great wooden flutes, but what is great about bamboo, in your opinion?
In the beginning, I enjoyed making. It was good, I think, for starting out and learning to make flutes, because I could make so many. If I'm making 50 bamboo flutes, then I can experiment with the embouchure. Then if I make a mistake and it doesn't work, it's no big deal. But today, if you're making the embouchure on a cocos wood flute and the wood costs 500 euros, and you make a mistake, you know. So it's nice when you're a student to have a cheap material and to make a lot of something, and also to experiment with ideas. Originally I had a G flute in G, and so I decided, okay, I want to make one in F, one in A, one in C, long. So how do I know where to put the holes on these other flutes? I don't have anything to copy. So I tried to figure out how to make this grow and shrink and work up the mathematics. And if the bottom note is too flat, I just take it to the saw and cut it off. So you have more freedom to experiment, to learn the ratios and learn some of the relationships and ideas of the construction. In that way, it was a very good material, good process for learning about flute making. When I met classical makers of Baroque flutes at a big meeting in Boston, I noticed everyone is making exact copies. At that time, anyway, I'm not sure what's going on today, but at that time, for classical music, authentic reproductions, everybody's making exact copies. And I was looking at a Baroque flute by G.A. Rottenberg, and I heard 2 makers talking, and the one guy says, "What are you using for this outside diameter measurement?" The original was 29.5 millimeters. And the other guy says, they were speaking French, which I don't understand perfectly, but he says, the original was 30. He says, "I'm using 30 et demi, 30 and a half." And the other guy's like, "Oh, sacrilege, because so for me, I'm always experimenting. I'm not so respectful of the rules, because I want to know why the rules exist. So for making, first with bamboo flutes and then with my wooden flutes, I'm free to interpret the ideas to suit myself. And that's a little bit different than some people's, like if you want to make violins, you can't reinterpret your own ideas. You won't get very far. You have to make very close copies. But the bamboo always was very special to me. It's, we know that the flute is very old. They've dug up flutes made out of bones, Ice Age Neolithic flutes, 30,000 years old. We don't have any bamboo flutes that are that old because the material won't keep. But probably to me it's one of the oldest instruments in China, Japan, and India, and also in North American Indians. It's associated with spirituality and meditation. It plays with the breath like the human voice. So there's a special quality with the flute in general, but with bamboo flutes. From the beginning, for me, that was there, and I really, it was special. I enjoyed that.
Sort of archaic instrument. So, yeah. Thanks a lot. Simon, the next question about...
Yes, passing forward, got the point of my question. Well, I'd like to ask to you all, which are the relations between old models and new models? I mean, we are used to call even the new flutes using old names. For example, Tommaso could say, "I play a Pratten style flute." I could say, "I play a Rhodes style flute." But all flutes are modern. are made by modern makers, and I don't know, they are not copies, obviously. But I would like to know what you think about this relation between the old model of the 19th century and the flutes you are making at the moment.
Can I take that? Yeah. When I started to make flutes, probably over 20 years ago, I had to decide. I was faced with this dilemma. I had measured so many different antique or 19th century instruments. You know, as all instrument makers do, the first thing they do is they mix and compare, and measure, especially measuring the internal bore. But at some stage, I decided I'm going to have to come up with my own design, because people were ringing me and they were asking me, what design is it? Is it a riddle? Is it a pattern? Or, you know, so I had to decide on my own design. Simply because as a maker, I work on my own. If someone it makes it very convenient, because when someone says to me, well, I tried one of your instruments you made it 10 years ago. I like one of those. I can say, well, yeah, it's the same instrument, because it's consistently have worked on the same one model for so many years. But by having different models, I just find for one person working in a workshop, it just confuses everyone, including yourself. Patrick will be familiar with the Henry Ford saying you can have any colour you want as long as it's black. And when he talked about cars, you know, it's important that you have. You can't put your hand around the world as a manufacturer. You have to kind of decide, well, this is what you do. If you give people too many options, I think you just confuse. So my model would be in the sense that it would be pattern in the sense that it's in one centre body. I think Patrick, I think you do the same.
Mostly, yeah.
Mostly. So I just find that in the sense that's the kind of a pattern design in that respect. Apart from that, it's not a pattern. It's the bore would be patterns tend to be bigger, louder, require more energy. What I strived to achieve was to manufacture a flute that was comfortable to play, that you didn't have to use too much energy, you didn't have to stretch too much, because I don't have very big fingers. It was actually, essentially, I wanted a flute that suited my style of playing, which is kind of where I come from, is County Clare. It's kind of a type of music I like to play, and you know, and I like to play it when I play it for 3-4 hours, so I don't need an instrument that requires too much energy. So that's in terms of design, that would be my approach.
I mean, what are the qualities of the flute that you like? What do you like in a flute? Do you like if you like more something like a Pratten style? Well, maybe you like the power of the sound.
Well, you see, too much power. You see, requires too much energy. So I mean, what you want is resistance when you play an embouchure, that you don't have to tight struggle too hard. You know, and with a good strong D, low D. You know.
I think we all want a flute that plays itself.
But you three, four, you lads are doing a good job, I think. Yeah. So, Mr. Morvan, do you want to answer the question about the model? What's your model, by example?
Je vais parler en français.
Oui,
I'm trying to translate.
English is not very good.
Preferite la traduzione? No, meglio la traduzione inglese perché devono sentire anche loro. Se volete qualcosa in italiano chiedetelo comunque, adesso se non beccate qualche passaggio ditecelo.
Anche in inglese possiamo tradurre.
In inglese no.
Donc, par rapport à ce que dit Eamon, je pense à peu près la même chose, c'est-à-dire j'ai joué plusieurs styles de flûte au départ. Je pense que tous les styles de flûte sont bien.
About what Eamon said, Stéphane thinks the same. So
tous les styles de flûte.
Stéphane played different styles of flute in the past, and he thinks that all the styles are tous les types de flûte.
Marche très bien, mais ils sont plus ou moins adaptés à son style de jeu, quoi.
But you have to find the style that suits the way you feel it. You can play, you can breathe.
Ecco, questo scusate è un passaggio importante, lo traduco anche in italiano, dicono che ogni stile di flauto deve essere anche suonato, tutti sono validi ma devono essere suonati nel modo giusto, questo ci tengo a dire.
Et donc, ce que j'ai cherché, moi, c'est, j'aime les flûtes qui ont de la largeur de son.
So Stéphane looked for a flute that had a very wide sound
Et facile à jouer.
and
S'il
easy
vous
to
plaît.
play.
S'il vous plaît.
Amen.
Autre chose, c'est que beaucoup de vieilles flûtes avaient des diapasons très hauts.
So lots of old flutes had high scales,
High pitched.
high pitch, sorry.
Donc aujourd'hui, ce que j'ai essayé de faire, c'est une flûte qui soit adaptée au diapason d'aujourd'hui.
So Stéphane tried to make a flute adapted to the pitch of today,
Pour jouer avec des accordéons,
to play with box and
sans qu'il y ait de perte de
piano,
son.
without losing this sound of the old flute.
Donc ça, c'était... j'ai joué beaucoup de flûtes anciennes. Pendant très longtemps, j'ai joué une phantom, une flûte...
For a long time, Stéphane has been playing a phantom flute. Phantom is
Elle était très haute.
An old flute, phantom is
Yeah.
very
Of the 19th century. So
Donc elle était très haute.
it was very high pitched, so he was
Donc,
always.
Elle marchait très bien quand le diapason était haut. Et dès que je tirais, l'échelle était... Voilà.
It worked well when the head was like that, but as soon as he would do this, he lose the sound of the flute.
L'échelle,
The pitch, the scale was not right.
Et donc, ma recherche, enfin, j'ai essayé de prendre ce qui m'intéressait sur le type rudal et praten. C'est-à-dire, j'ai longtemps aussi j'ai fait des copies pendant longtemps de style Bouzy, Nicholson.
Stéphane copied for a long time the Boozy style.
Et
Nicholson. Okay. And he tried to mix the good things of each style, Redol and Boozy.
Voilà. Et en fait, ce qui m'a conduit à ça aussi, c'est que j'ai une idée, je sais à peu près ce que je veux comme son. J'ai une idée du son.
And the most important thing is that Stéphane has the sound. He knows what sound he wants to hear when he plays the flute. So that's the point of the objective.
Voilà. Et c'est ça qui
The purpose.
Et c'est ça qui me guide dans mon travail.
That's what guides him when he makes the flute.
So you have, in a way, to know what you like. You have to know what sound you want to kind of from the flute. And Mr. Olwell, what do you think about the question? We know that you make at least 3 models. Then we also have an Aaron Olwell model, and we will talk about it.
I think it's there's a lot of different qualities and a lot of different variables, but we can keep in mind that there was a revolution around 1830 in the flute. The modern flute was born in London by Charles Nicholson, a flute player, and his father developed this new flute. So those ideas were that the flute should be very loud. The earlier flutes were all made to be played more like Baroque sounding instruments, or Mozart's flute. Would have been sweet sounding, and the idea was gentle. So those flutes are not good for Irish music, because we want to be strong.
Yeah, that's what we try to do. Yeah.
So this is a French flute. So this is, I think it's useful even for players who aren't interested in the minutiae of flute design, to keep in mind, you know, what small holes and a small bore and this polite sound of these earlier flutes versus if they want a big sound, a hard sound. So, because what Charles Nicholson changed, he changes the head joint, the holes, and some changes in the bore to try to bring out these qualities. If you hear the earlier flute, so if you think the violins are playing gut strings, the sound of music is different. There's no microphones, no electricity in the world, right? And this is also an earlier flute design, pre-Nicholson. This is an American flute, but it's got ideas from 1810, 1820. Also a sweeter sounding flute. The other change, of course, is to put the metal inside the head joint. The early flutes are all wood head joints. Even the French flute has a tuning slide, but no metal in the embouchure. So the English, they adopted the fully lined head. That's part of an English sound. In Paris, the French never liked this sound. They say that's a bad sound. It's harsh and disagreeable. So, when I'm reading a little bit of history, and I realize that the English and French are always fighting, so they're not going to get together on flute design. So I think at that time, there's a national pride that we are different from you, you know. It's not obvious today unless we think, you know, because now we're friends, right? We're not going to kill each other, are we? So they take the head joint, they line it with metal, they make the mouth hole bigger, they make this thinner. This amount of wood is smaller, and the edges are very sharp. Charles Nicholson has a very particular way of blowing the flute. Everyone that hears him is astonished, right? The accounts written down from that time period, when people hear him play the flute for the first time, he's got a new sound. It's like the electric guitar. I mean, this is for real. Everybody says, you know, it's amazing, it's amazing. So they all want to play like him. They all adopt his flute, and this change has a direct influence on the invention of the modern silver flute, right? Because the German guy, Theobald Böhm, comes to London with his new improved flute from Germany. He hears Charles Nicholson play, and he's very sad because he can't do this. He says, I was unable to match him in tone and volume. So he goes back to his workshop thinking, what am I going to do? He looks at the holes. He says, well, he's got these giant holes. Right? I've got the old small holes. It's just small holes. So, and this is, when I started out in 1980, 81, it was very difficult to read about this. I went to the library and found these old books and noticed the accounts. Today it's all on the web. You can read about it on the web. It's really great. There's the man in Australia.
Or you can just call Mr. Olwell.
Yeah. So I think it's helpful because you're a student of the flute, a new flute player. Say, well, what do I want? You know, do I want this the macho sound? Do I want to be able to play with the harp? You know, if you're playing with a harp player and a voice, you know, when I play with a singer, I got to back off a little bit, right? I'm going to quiet down and try to adapt my flute playing to the voice. Originally, the flute is singing, you know, but these other qualities come from marching and military music and drumming. So in Irish music, the flute now is a percussion instrument, right? Because it's accompanying drumming, right? That's a new quality for the flute. That's different. I think most people who are making new flutes, we are not always copying the Nicholson design exactly, because it's very hard to play. They said Charles Nicholson was called Iron Lip, because his embouchure is so strong, and he favors a very thin head joint to get this particular sound. When I'm trying to play these flutes originally, I find it, you know, it's hard. But if I make this a little bit fatter, now all of a sudden I can play the flute, a normal human. Yeah. Okay. Without no iron lip.
Mr. Cotter, what do you think about the difference between the French style head, the fully lined head? What model do you choose for your flute?
Well, I just go to the line tape.
Yes.
I always use the line tape. I just find that this. I have tried on line tapes, but I find that they don't work as good for me. I know some flute players.
Can you tell us why exactly?
I don't know. I just experimented with both, but I was convinced that the line tape for me was better head, you know. And I was worried because, you know, when you have semi-lined, it's semi-lined head, which means it's not that it's unlined, it just means it's lined maybe as far as here, which means that you have an inconsistency. So, you know, when you export the flute to America or to mainland Europe, and it's so warm, you worry that because you don't have a metal all the way through it, the stresses might cause the head to crack.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's just a decision I made. You know, like all decisions, I just use a lined tape.
Okay. Okay. And Mr. Morvan, what's your opinion about? You have to defend your national style.
But you're a Frenchman playing the English style, right? You're a traitor.
À propos des têtes tubées et non tubées, je pense que les deux sont bien, c'est différent. Moi je sais que je tube mes têtes parce qu'il y a plus de dynamique.
Stéphane thinks that both styles are nice, are fine, but he just decided to tube the head because
More dynamique.
Because there's more dynamic to the sound.
Is this a matter of what do you mean for dynamic?
More high notes.
Harmonics? Partials? Upper notes?
No, c'est
Ranging.
When you play, le son part très vite.
Projection?
Faster. Is that a matter of response?
Projection.
Or projection, yeah.
On more resonance.
Risonanza diversa, parla di armonici rispetto del suono. Di armonica
brillantezza.
The thing of the earlier music has a smaller orchestra, a smaller hall, right, and fewer people in the audience. So the new music from 1830, Bizet has the largest orchestra in history, 180 musicians. The hall is big. So you have to project way to the rear of the hall. The same is with the voice. The difference with the folk singer. So if you hear a modern flute player on the silver flute, they are taught to do this. Just like a singer, exactly the same physics as a singer. Open everything up. You got to send the sound way back there. And I agree. So for the loud, I think we are in agreement. For the really loud session. The lined head drum, you know, if you play warm, intimate music, you forget it, you're drowned out, right? You got the banjo here, you got the accordion here.
C'est aussi une question de couleur de son.
It's also a question of the color of the sound.
Yes.
In classical music, we talk about the color of sound. Not in Irish music. We're talking about color.
Okay, very interesting. I was to ask you: is it possible to line metal tubing bamboo flute?
Well, in my head joints, because I was I never had a wooden flute, and I was just taking measurings.
Gli abbiamo chiesto se è possibile, se è possibile incapsulare un flauto di bambù.
Incapsulare sarebbe fare la testata dell'elastico.
So I never had wooden flute, I was just taking measurements of the wooden flute. But I had a very good friend, and he was working beside the opera house, and he was fixing boom flutes. And he was a master of boom flutes, and he was making classical head joints. And I was 18 or 19 when I started to make this bamboo flute, and I just wanted to understand what's working in it when you are blowing the air into this hole, what's going on. And he was telling me many things. He was about the head joint. That's very important thing. And I was just trying different head joints, and well, in my head joints I don't throw away the metal tube, because one is that I'm worried a little bit that it will, from the warm, I don't know if you're blowing it will the bamboo will split. And the other thing is that I became that maybe because I have a different size of bore inside this in the body, but I became that just a tiny little bit conical head joint I can get very well balanced the notes, and that means that I can get every note on nearly on the same level. Like I had a problem that in the left hand notes, if I had a good D, like okay, on this flute I show you because this got a quite nice D. This has a very nice strong D, but when I'm playing on it, I notice that on my left hand this got a nearly cylindric head joint, and I notice that on the left hand side the notes get a little bit windy and not that resonant. And if I'm making just, it's very hard to find that to find that angle. If you are making just a tiny little bit conical head joint, you can get all the notes, all the left hand notes.
In balance.
Yeah, in balance.
With the lowest
and strong. And that's why I don't put through away the metal tube, the brass tube, because when you're drilling out the head, and after you burning the bamboo goes stretching a little bit, like a half a millimeter.
Yeah.
And after you're drilling a little bit again, and after you sand it down, and you can get just a tiny little bit conical head. And with this conical head, I can get a little bit, a nice balance between the notes. In tone. And yes, because it's of course the plug. It's important that where you flute, because if you make a kind of parabolic shape of flute, the octave can be a little bit higher, but you can play with the distance of the embouchure hole and the plug. So this one, I think this is my one, and I think on this one I find that balance, that it's easy, comfortable to play on this on the left hand notes. That's why it's it's a challenge. You have to make hundreds.
Yeah, I think that it's a good definition. It's already a challenge.
So Aaron is playing a half-line head, which he prefers.
Okay, so
I'm playing a fully lined head. So we are always having a conversation in the shop. We haven't yet done this, but we're going to do an experiment. We will have 6 head joints, 3 line and 3 half-line. And we'll take flute players and we'll blindfold them.
why don't you wait the next April?
Yes, we don't have a thing.
You should wait the next April.
We're not
next week.
We're not ready yet. Yeah. Otherwise, we can do it today. But if you want, we can play the same flute with half line.
Okay.
And people can hear just for a short time.
Close your eyes and see if you can tell which is which.
Lovely idea.
But you must be the same player as well.
But you pick up yours and then.
No,
the same player. Right.
Same player.
Because if you are blowing harder, and so adopt a classical embouchure. As opposed to Irish style. It's confusing, no? Yeah.
You have actually confused me a lot.
But
Okay,
that will
next
blindfold you and you'll be even more confused.
Yeah, blindfold. Next question, Mr. Cesano.
Yes, talking about materials. I mean, wood or plastic? Well, I'm going to explain here. There are kinds of wood that are almost impossible to find at the moment. You know, cocos is very difficult to find.
I'll just make the point to connect it to the previous question, which is that the scientists tell us it doesn't matter if the head joint is lined or unlined.
Yeah.
The scientists tell us the sound is the same because the sound wave is inside the flute. The head joint doesn't vibrate like the soundboard of a violin. We feel, however, that it does matter, that it is different. So, I thought one time when I was looking at the diagram of the ear, the way the ear works, that the organs of the ear are only this far from your jaw. So for the player, he's got the flute here, and the sound of the flute is also connecting through the body to his inner ear. So the player has a subjective experience which is different from maybe out there. So he might play Cocos and Blackwood and say, oh, this is different. But now can the man out there, and put the blindfold on him, can he tell? So, I read recently they took old Stradivarius violins and played them with new violins. And the Stradivarius violins didn't do very well. People chose the new ones if they were blindfolded.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's an interesting question that other people can say.
Anyway, you just use wood to make flutes. At the moment.
Je vais d'abord rebondir un peu sur ce que disait Patrick. Je travaille un petit peu avec, j'ai eu l'occasion de rencontrer un chercheur en acoustique.
Stéphane met 1 year ago a researcher in acoustic.
For at the university.
At the university.
Yeah, a university researcher. Yeah.
Il me disait que la même chose que disait Patrick jusqu'à présent, on disait que la matière.
The same as Patrick just said, that the material doesn't impact the sound.
She knows it better than you.
À ce propos, j'ai une petite anecdote. Chris Willis en Angleterre, il disait si la matière n'a pas d'importance, on n'a qu'à faire des flûtes en éponge.
So Chris Willis was saying about what the scientist says. If the material doesn't matter, so why don't we just make flutes out of sponge?
Ce que je pense, ce que la personne, le chercheur dit, c'est qu'on est au tout début de la recherche acoustique des flûtes.
So the researcher was just saying to Stéphane that we are just at the beginning of the studies about the acoustic of the flute.
Yeah. Et que s'il manque un paramètre dans le cahier des charges au départ qu'on fait la mise en équation voilà. Alors quand il manque un paramètre, le résultat va être complètement chaotique et va être à l'opposé de ce qu'on a fait.
There are so many parameters that impact the sound. When you do the studies, if you miss just one parameter, it will all just the results won't.
So you have to mix a bit all the different things. Yeah. You can tell us just a few of them, just the most important of them.
Les plus importants des paramètres.
Pour moi, c'est la densité.
Density of the wood.
Densité et surtout à l'intérieur l'état de surface. La rugosité.
Rugosity inside the wood.
Because some woods have a grain. There's tiny little holes in the surface of the wood. So I think flute makers have chosen boxwood and blackwood and cocos wood because the wood is very unusual in that when you take a sharp knife and you scrape it flat, you have a surface like glass. with no tiny little holes from the tubes in the wood, and that's an important quality. So there's other woods that are hard, like Brazilian rosewood, which is sought after for guitars, but that wood has tiny little holes in it, so you would have to fill that.
Un autre paramètre, je pense, important, dont on ne parle pas très souvent, c'est la porosité. Il y a des bois avec, des pores plus ouverts que d'autres, plus fermés.
So that's in the structure of the wood, another parameter is the...
La porosità, sì, avete
beccato
French is more senior in Italian.
Yeah.
And Mr. Cotter, what do you think about materials?
Well, for me, I use African blackwood because it's
I see.
Yeah, it's easy enough to get, and it's quite plentiful from Mozambique, Tanzania primarily, and it's still quite accessible. One of the reasons why I'm very fond of African blackwood is because very few people have allergies, because when you go into the more exotic woods, you find that some people get rash, and you have to put. It's very unusual for people to have an allergy to African blackwood, but it does happen, but it's very rarely. But it's just that I find that it's most consistent. I get very few problems with cracks, and the most common first problem you get with a flute if you're going to get a crack is here on the barrel. I'm sure you'll see a lot of the older flutes, the old Baroque, or sort of the old 19th century flutes, and a lot of the time are stitched here because it's the first part of the flute that's going to give if it gets extreme cold or extreme dryness. It's just I find it's the most consistent, and I have tried caucus wood, I've tried boxwood. I mean, I have made boxwood and a few caucus wood flutes, but I find caucus wood is just too expensive, And I mean, it's a practical thing. People are conscious of price, they're buying it. It's an issue, So the difference between caucus and blackwood for me is not enough to justify the costing,
I understand you. And what do you think about boxwood?
Boxwood is nice, but again, I find it's. I've met some boxwood flutes recently just on special orders. I tend not to use boxwood because it has a life of its own. It just it's more susceptible to bending and it's not as stable.
It absorbs moisture so easily. The fellow in 1890 said that boxwood is more suitable for a hygrometer to measure humidity.
It takes some.
It's a sponge. But I still like it for making flutes. I think
it's beautiful wood to work with, And what I have to do when I start working with boxwood, I have to clean off all the machines because it stains very easily. If you have oil in your hands and you put it on, you touch boxwood, it kind of stains. Yeah.
Okay, now at this point I would like to introduce you, Mr. Aaron Olwell. So, what do you think about flutes? There is an excellent movie in the US, but maybe you have a few copies to sell for this.
have 2 copies.
Yeah. Just 2 copies of the movie about Mr. Olwell, so don't lose it, but don't kill each other for that. And on this fantastic movie about your life, you say that you are not just following your father's flute steps. So what do you mean about that?
I think one of the main points of departure was maybe it had something to do with my getting interested in playing the fiddle early on when I was a teenager as well, and finding that it was much easier on the fiddle, at least in the beginning for me, to play in some of the stranger keys and stuff. So at some point I started getting interested in seeing, well, we have 6 or more years of work for all these people who want, a fully keyed flute. So spending lots of time making these, well, it seems kind of pointless unless I'm going to try to use them a little bit. So the last couple of years I've been getting interested in doing that, and it so happens that I got a whole bunch of music off of a friend of mine's computer a couple of years ago, and it included a bunch of music that was recorded mostly, I think, in America, but by Italians who were living there. And there was one piece that kind of caught my attention. I said, "Oh, that's really, interesting piece of music." There was this mandolin player named Giovanni Giovanni, and I think he recorded in the New York. Giovanni, sorry. In New York sometime between the 20s or 30s, I'm not sure. But
and how did it influence your idea of flute making?
But if I just interrupt, originally, often the flute in Irish music is a kind of diatonic instrument, like with 6 holes. Seamus Tansey played a flute with the keys knocked off, right? The Rue Rose flute with the keys broken off. And a lot of the early players, it's like a penny whistle. But today, now the flute is evolving into more of a chromatic instrument, and that's what Aaron got interested in.
I have the feeling that we are now talking about keys on the flute.
Yeah,
but it's silver on the flute. Actually, keys means silver.
But the difference between a flute as a 6-hole instrument and the flute as a fully chromatic instrument, which can adapt to other kinds of music, right?
So is this your idea? Your idea is to make a fully chromatic instrument because you like fully chromatic music. Would you like to give us a demonstration?
That's what I was getting at. So this was called Waltz Brillante, but it sounds on the recording it's almost too fast to really be recognizable as a waltz. But I'll play it a little bit slower. And they were sort of bemoaning the fact that the young Italian people don't seem very interested in playing Italian music. You know, there's not as much of a tradition resurgence going on.
Is there a traditional Italian music?
Well, that's what they were saying. Is that it's more vague.
Okay, but also about Irish traditional music. We were in my house a few days ago, and you played an excellent tune in G minor. Do you remember it?
What was it?
A composition of a fiddle player. Paddy something.
Oh, Paddy Carty, yeah. I don't know if he composed it now.
Also, just to demonstrate, I will ask my friend Aaron to play this Paddy Carty tune in G minor. So, just to demonstrate that it's true what Patrick says, that a lot of Irish music has always been